In a remote village far from the bustling cities of the world, there was a place that everyone knew to avoid. It was a stretch of dense forest, its trees taller than any seen elsewhere, with their gnarled branches twisted in grotesque shapes, always seeming to reach out for those who passed by. The villagers called this forsaken part of the woods Shadowed Hollow. Generations of villagers had passed down warnings about it. The hollow was said to be the dwelling place of witches old, powerful, and filled with malice toward anyone who disturbed their dark rituals. These witches had lived there since the oldest of times, when the village was little more than a handful of cottages, surrounded by nothing but wilderness. Legend said that long ago, before the village existed, a coven of witches had ruled over the land, practicing black magic that corrupted everything around them. The witches controlled the shadows, the mist, and even the minds of those who dared venture too close to their territory. In the early days, brave men tried to confront them, hoping to rid the land of the witches' dark influence, but none ever returned. Their bodies were never found. Eventually, the people gave up, content to let the witches have their hollow, so long as they stayed within it. For centuries, this arrangement kept the peace. The witches never crossed the river that separated the hollow from the village, and the villagers avoided crossing into the hollow. Stories were passed down about the consequences of disturbing the witches, and although most villagers never came close to the place, the warnings lived in the back of everyone's mind. But as the years went on, fewer people truly believed the old legends. In the minds of the newer generation, the tales were nothing more than superstitions. No one had actually seen the witches, and the idea of black magic in the modern world seemed laughable. One crisp autumn evening, a group of young men from the village gathered at the local tavern. The air outside was cool, and the golden leaves crunched underfoot as the villagers made their way home for the night. Inside the tavern, however, the fire roared, and the drinks flowed freely. Laughter echoed off the walls as the men told stories of their hunts, their work, and their dreams of escaping the dull life of the village. Among the group was a man named Marcus, tall and broad-shouldered, with a thick beard and a loud, confident voice. Marcus was known for his bravado. He liked to boast that there was nothing in the world that scared him. As the night wore on and the drinks continued to pour, the conversation turned to the village's legends. One of the younger men, clearly tipsy, mentioned the witches of Shadowed Hollow. "Do you believe in all that?" he asked, his words slurred, but his eyes wide with curiosity. The older men exchanged uneasy glances, but Marcus merely laughed. "Believe in it? Of course not. It's just a story to keep children in line. Witches? Black magic? It's all nonsense." "Are you sure about that?" Another man chimed in. "My grandmother used to say she saw strange lights in the hollow once, said they moved like they were alive. And there's that old tale about the hunters who disappeared." Marcus waved him off. "Old wives' tales, all of them. No one's seen a witch in centuries. Hell, no one's even set foot in the hollow in years. It's just a patch of forest like any other." But the seed of an idea had already been planted in Marcus's mind. He was always looking for ways to prove himself, and what better way to prove his courage than by entering the hollow? The others, still tipsy from the drink, were easy to convince. "Let's go," Marcus said, standing up from the table with a gleam in his eye. "We'll go to the hollow, right now, and I'll show you all there's nothing to be afraid of. We'll laugh about this over drinks tomorrow." Though some hesitated, the rest were too drunk or too eager to back down. One by one, they agreed to join Marcus. Together, they set out from the tavern, their footsteps loud in the quiet of the village night. They moved quickly, emboldened by the alcohol and by Marcus's confident strides leading the way. As they left the warmth of the village lights behind, the air grew colder. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale light on the dirt path leading toward the hollow. The entrance to Shadowed Hollow was marked by an ancient stone archway, half collapsed and covered in moss. The archway had once been part of a larger structure, but whatever building had stood there was long gone, swallowed by the forest. As they approached, the mist thickened, curling up from the ground like tendrils of smoke. The trees on the edge of the hollow were twisted and blackened, their branches reaching out like skeletal arms. The sight of them made some of the men pause, but Marcus strode forward without a second glance. "Come on," he said, turning back to the others. "It's just trees. Are we going to let some old sticks scare us?" They followed him, though their steps were slower now. The deeper they ventured into the hollow, the more the atmosphere changed. The air was colder here, and the mist clung to their skin like damp cloth. Strange noises echoed through the trees, branches creaking, leaves rustling, though there was no wind. The mist seemed to move on its own, twisting and swirling around their feet. The deeper they went, the quieter the forest became, until all that could be heard was the sound of their own breathing. Finally, they reached a clearing. At the center of the clearing stood an ancient oak tree, its massive trunk blackened with age. The ground around it was covered in strange symbols, etched into the dirt in a pattern that made the hair on the back of their necks stand up. At the base of the tree, something moved. At first, it looked like a pile of rags, crumpled and forgotten, but then it stirred, rising slowly until it took the shape of a woman, an impossibly old woman, her face hidden beneath a hood of tattered cloth. She muttered to herself in a language none of them could understand, her voice low and guttural, like the sound of gravel being crushed beneath heavy boots. One of the men gasped, stumbling back. "What is that?" Marcus narrowed his eyes, stepping forward. "It's just some crazy old woman," he said, his voice steady though his heart had begun to race. "Probably some hermit who lives out here." But as he spoke, the old woman lifted her head. Her face, though mostly hidden beneath the hood, was pale and sunken, her eyes like two dark pits that seemed to see straight through them. She grinned, her lips curling back to reveal a mouth full of jagged, yellow teeth. "You dare trespass here," she hissed, her voice like the rasping of dry leaves. Marcus scoffed, though his hands trembled at his sides. "We're not afraid of you, old woman. We're just here to see if the stories are true." The witch, because now there was no doubt in their minds that this was a witch, laughed, a hollow, echoing sound that sent shivers down their spines. "Oh, the stories are true, boy, and you will pay the price for your arrogance." Before any of them could react, she raised her hands to the sky. The symbols etched into the ground began to glow, pulsing with a dark, unnatural light. The air around them grew thick and heavy, pressing down on their chests until it was hard to breathe. Marcus staggered back, but it was too late. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and from the shadows, figures began to emerge. Dark, twisted shapes with glowing red eyes, their bodies cloaked in tattered robes. They moved silently, their feet not touching the ground, their eyes fixed on the men. Marcus tried to run, but the mist had become solid, wrapping around his legs and dragging him down. The others screamed, but their cries were muffled, swallowed by the mist and the shadows. One by one, they were pulled into the darkness, their bodies disappearing into the ground. Marcus thrashed, trying to break free, but the more he struggled, the tighter the mist clung to him. He looked up, his eyes wide with terror, as the witch approached him. "You should have stayed away," she whispered, her voice like the crackling of burning wood. "Now you belong to the hollow." With a final, bone-chilling laugh, the witch vanished into the mist. The shadows closed in around Marcus, and the last thing he saw was the twisted face of one of the dark figures, its red eyes gleaming as it reached for him. Days later, the villagers noticed that the young men had gone missing. When a search party was sent into the hollow, they found nothing, no bodies, no tracks, not even a sign that the men had ever been there. The only thing left was the ancient oak tree, standing tall and silent at the center of the clearing, its blackened bark etched with strange, glowing symbols. From that day on, no one in the village spoke of Shadowed Hollow. The story of Marcus and the others became a cautionary tale, whispered only in hushed tones. The villagers knew the truth: the witches still lived in the hollow, and their black magic was as powerful as ever, and those who dared to enter the hollow were never seen again.